focaccia bread. And it is not my first time making bread, but it is my first time making focaccia. So kind of a learning curve, but I'm really excited to be making this video and hopefully a successful focaccia. The recipe I'm following I will link below. I can't remember the name of the blog that I found it on, but it looks like a really good one. It is a rosemary focaccia. I don't, however, have rosemary. I was going to do Parmesan, but I don't have that either. So I think I'm just going to make your straight focaccia. I do have some really lovely olive oil that is Tuscan herb, so that should help bring out more like earthy tones from the rosemary that I am missing. But yeah, I will also make sure to put on the screen all the ingredients as I show them throughout each step. So let's get started. Okay, so here I have 1 ounce of active dry yeast, 2 teaspoons of honey that is local honey here. We bought at a farmer's market. I like to use honey in my bread recipes because I've heard that it can help my allergies. Not proven, so don't trust me. And then I have 1 1/4, or about 1/3, I think. 1 1/3 cup of warm water. I'm going to put them all in here. I'm going to first put the hot water and honey. Let's see if I can do this. So here's my warm water. I'm going to put my honey in. Honey is in the water. I'm going to gently stir it to get it mixed into our water so it's not just sitting at the bottom. Okay. And now I'm going to sprinkle my yeast right on top of the water. And I'm going to let that sit for about 5 minutes and I'll be back in a few, okay? So as you can see, the yeast has foamed up, and if I get a little bit closer, you can see some bubbles popping, lots of activity. It's very happy. That's a good sign. Over here, I have 1/4 cup of my Tuscan herb olive oil. I have 2 teaspoons of salt and 3 1/2 cups of flour. I like to sprinkle my salt with my flour. That way I can equally distribute it into the flour mixture, nice and gently. Get it really good and mixed up in there. And I like to hand knead my breads. I don't have a fancy KitchenAid stand mixer, so it's always just been my preferred method of cooking bread. I prefer to do it by hand. It's the old-fashioned way. It's always been more fun. Okay, so I'm going to slowly add in some flour to my yeast and water and honey. I'm going to do about half of this bowl. And then I'm going to add in some olive oil, but not all of it. And I'm just going to toss this around. Okay. Now it's got a nice sticky consistency, so I'm going to continue adding my flour and salt, a little bit more. Save a little bit for the end because you never want to over flour. And I'm going to add the rest of my olive oil. Oh, it smells so good. As I said earlier, I don't have any rosemary or Parmesan to add into this recipe, so for me, I'm just going to be relying on my olive oil to bring the flavor of those Italian herbs out. And in the future, if this turns out well, then I will likely, find some rosemary, maybe grow some rosemary in my garden. Okay, so this is looking good. It's starting to feel like a dough in here. Okay, so now that the dough is able to be handled, instead of doing the traditional, not the traditional way of putting it a dough hook and just letting it knead it inside there, I'm going to hand knead. So I've just lightly dusted my countertop with some flour as to not add too much, and I'm going to knead the dough for about 5 minutes, and then we're going to let it rest for about 60. When it's time to rest the dough, I have a bowl over here that has some of the olive oil that I'm using in the recipe, and I'm going to spread it around, and then the dough will rest in that greased olive oil bowl. I'm done kneading the dough. I have greased my bowl. I'm going to gently put him in here, get him greased on all sides so he has a nice home to rise in. Set him back on his little caboose. And a trick that I learned is if you want a warm area in your house, because like for me, example, we keep the temperature in our house at about 70 degrees with the AC running most of the day, is I start my dishwasher and then it heats up the counter where the bread proofs. So I'm gonna do that now. Now that's gonna proof and rise for about an hour, and I will check back in with you guys when it is big and bubbly.
It's rolling.
Start over. You have to cue me. Welcome back. Our focaccia bread has doubled in size and is ready to be turned out on a well olive oiled sheet pan, which I will then be shaping our dough into the shape of the sheet pan and letting it rest for about 20 more minutes. Here we go. Shake it, shake it, shake it. Oh, it's juicy. Oh, it's juicy. Okay. And so what I'm doing now is I'm pressing it into the pan. You can also roll it out if you prefer, but I like the press method. It will spring back, so you might have to come back and do it a couple times until it's all set in shape, but it's looking pretty good so far. And it's gonna rise again, so you don't really need to worry too much about it shrinking back down. So for now, I'm gonna leave it like this and let it get another rise. Okay, so I'm back. The dough has been pressed into our pan and it rose for another 20 minutes. I came and I spread it out again and I poked holes. You're supposed to poke all the way down to the pan. Not sure why they do that, but it is a signature focaccia look. So here is our dough before the oven. Now we're going to be putting it in the oven for 20 minutes at 400 degrees. And let's say a prayer that this comes out good. Thank you, Jesus, for this bread. Amen. Okay, I've changed. The timer went off. And I'm about to take this out of the oven. I'm really nervous. Ah! Oh, look at it. Ooh. Hello, you hear that? Oh!
Knock on bread, though, it's good.